3, 2, 1. Hi everybody, welcome to Enemies and Projectiles Part 1, where we get into using the broadcast and clone code. And this is going to be the advanced stuff in Intro to Game Making. I'm excited to see what you come up with, and we're going to start. So this should look pretty similar to what you had at the end of the last project. We have our idle animation here, we have our sound effect, and then we have a little bit of a reaction effect. I've changed the code around a little bit. So I've changed this to set brightness, and I've also changed my keys to a WASD, which is a little better than the up, down, left, right arrow just because it's on the top left, so you can mouse and walk at the same time. So to start things off, we're going to create a projectile first and then create an enemy. If you look here, I've got this missile. I had gone over to Giphy and I had searched Fireball or anything to throw, and you could download this as a social. If you can't find anything you like here, you could also type in projectile sprite sheet, and there's going to be tons of these, right? Just remember, if you find a sprite sheet that you like, but you don't like the color, we can change that in Pixlr. I've used this little missile here. The first thing that we need to do though, before we get into clones, is to use a broadcast. So if we go to events, these are the few of the events that we've already used before. How we get into complex game making is we have to start to make broadcasts. If we come down here, we're gonna bring this in. So I've already had one called shoot, but you could name it whatever you want. So I'm gonna leave it as shoot, and I'm gonna put together my normal code when flag is clicked forever loop, and I'll bring in my if then. So I'm going to do if spacebar is pressed, I'm going to press shoot. I'm also going to bring a wait block because I know if this creates my projectile, if it shoots off my missile or my fireball, I don't want that to happen like 1,000 times a second. So if I change this code here, maybe I'll make it 0.5 seconds, then it can only happen once every 1/5 of a second. You can change this to tweak your difficulty in your game. I want you to bring in your projectile, so it should be your second sprite here. And we've already got the start of this code where we start to use clones. So when the app is run, I want you to go over to looks and we're gonna press bring in hide, okay? That is going to hide your original sprite. So we're gonna bring in this code. When I receive shoot, that's gonna be an event at the end. When I receive shoot, we're gonna go back to the control group, and the clone tools are all down here. So you can bring in a when I start as a clone and when I delete it as a clone, and create a clone of myself. What we wanna do is when I receive shoot, we want to add create a clone of myself. So what this is going to do, every time we press the space bar, it's going to create an extra copy of our projectile or whatever, and we'll be shooting it out. So we've got a little bit of code to build at this point. So when I start as clone, what do I want to do? First thing, because it's hidden, we want to show. That means it's going to start to apply. So if I press this real quick, so notice my little projectile has jumped up here. So now I'm going to build this up. What do we want to happen when it shows? Well, first thing, we want it to go to your character. Now, everyone's character is named something different, but we're going to click Snorlax walking, and we're going to point in a direction. We want it to point towards something. For right now, just for this example, we're going to do point towards mouse pointer. So every time we press it, it's going to point towards. Now, you may notice something silly is all these clones are starting to just appear on top of him. So we obviously need to do a couple different things. All right, so what we want to do is bring in a repeat until block. And so we'll do repeat until touching mouse pointer or touching the edge. It's going to move 10 steps. So if we attach that, and then afterwards, we're going to delete this clone. So really important that you have some code to delete your clone. When we press play now, one last thing is maybe we want to bring in some effects on your projectile. When I start as a clone, we want to set the size, and we want to, if it's a GIF or a sprite sheet, we want to add animation. So say if I set this up to 200%, now we can see it fully animating. If you wanted to create some variation, you could bring in some random blocks. Maybe you want it to go faster or slower. Maybe you want it to be bigger or smaller, depending. So this is where we start to think about our code. If we're reading our code and we think about our interactions, what do we want to build? That you are finished when you have your character and he's shooting his projectile at the walls or your mouse pointer. And if you've got this interaction built with your code, you're good to go. I'll see you in part 2. Bye.